Namaste, good morning. Greetings to everybody who's joined this show, another show for your in the Manage Better series that I do. Thank you very much for joining. Those who have already joined and are live, please let me know where you've joined from. And also, it helps me to know whether the LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter feeds are live. Technology is a funny thing. Sometimes it fails us when we want it the most. So the show today, of course, is more about habits. I have already shared a little bit in the promos of the show and the promotional text and banners that I have shared. Uh, I've been wanting to do this show for a while now, and but I wanted to feel a little worthy of doing this show because the speaker that I was looking for is it's quite a champion in this field. So you don't want to be interviewing somebody without having any um, feeling worthy to do that. That is one. B, I also have been, I would say, I won't say investigating, but trying to learn more about this field. So doing more reading so that the show becomes a little bit more engaging for you all. So we already have some speakers, some audience mentioning. So thank you, Deepak. I'll come to your comment in a bit. And so super happy to be bringing to you the 45th show in this series. As you know, I do this Manage Better series, which is this 45th show, and the other series on quality, which is in its 20th show. And delighted that I can continue this for more than 2 years now, actually. So it's a special feeling. And the show with your love and affection has actually gotten better. So coming to today's show, of course, I did say in my notes earlier during leading up to the show that we all want to build good habits, and it is really tough. Bad habits seem to be easier to slide into, but good habits are really, really difficult to build. And one could argue that the process is same, but somehow good habits are more difficult. Many of us focus on motivation and willpower alone to build these good habits, and we all know that it doesn't work only with willpower and motivation. So we need some kind of a system or process, and the person I will quickly introduce in a bit is exactly bringing that kind of a scientific rigor and practical approach to building building life changing habits, not just good habit, but something that will change our lives. We'll get to that, but as I always say, I get interested in a subject which will help all of us to manage better. This show is about all of us can get better from wherever we are, whatever we have, uh, whatever stage we are in life, we can get better. So this show is all about that, and habits is a strong part of that. And when I don't know enough about anything, I always reach out to somebody who knows more than me. And the guest is exactly the same person today. So without further ado, I'll invite India's top habits coach, Rajan Singh. And Rajanji, namaste. I will introduce you a little bit so that the audience, of course, most people would know you. But and I was telling you pre-live that I got a call this morning asking how did you even get to Rajan Singh. So little bit of a fanboy moment certainly for some people in the audience. So thank you very much for accepting, and allow me to introduce you a little bit. Rajan is, of course, an electrical engineering graduate from IIT Kanpur. And surprise, surprise, post that he joined the Indian Police Service and served for many years as Trivandrum or Thiruvananthapuram's police commissioner, a place I have visited quite often. So I used to have a team there. Appointed as the police chief at the age of 28. Many of us start our career that time. Rajan was already police commissioner of a 3,500 strong Capital Police Force there. And of course, he loved the challenge. Anybody would in that space. But after some years, he started feeling some intellectual stagnation. We'll ask him about that. And the IPS job was not challenging enough, right? So it is strange that some of our we will have ambitions of that kind of a job, and for some people the life, that life becomes a little bit less challenging. But that's about life. Everybody is different. So even though he had another 30 odd years left in this service, he then moved on and enrolled for an MBA program with Wharton, and post that work with McKinsey, and one thing leading to another. returned back to India, and his craving for challenges and inherent restlessness is the word I'm using, led him to become an entrepreneur. And the area he picked is habits. Rajan is now now runs the habit building startup called Habit Strong, and above all, Rajan is a disciplined and routine fanatic, right? So I will tell you one small, routine and fanatic thing. I give every speaker 15 minutes pre-live session. In 2 years, he's the only one who was dot on 10:45 for this show. So not a second more, not a second early, not a second late. And the responses also during our interaction leading up to the show were stand testimony to this discipline and routine. He's a firm believer in the power of morning routine and a focused life. His startup, of course, Habit Strong, helps people to build and improve their life by bringing focus into it, self discipline, good habits, including waking up early, meditation, journaling, etc. He hasn't mentioned this, but he's a avid runner. I have been a runner for some time. I'm on a break, little bit, slight injury, but so I know what running includes. So all discipline, routine, everything goes into that. At Habit Strong, Rajan and his team, of course, are trying to make change happen for everybody. So I would strongly urge that those who are interested in habits, of course, we will learn more about that. To check out the site, I will share the link. And so, welcome, Rajan. With that introduction, welcome to the show. Any opening comments you wanted to share with our audience?
Thank you, Anshuman. Delighted to be here. Obviously, I can't see who all are here, but if you're listening to this morning, hello to you as well. And yeah, let's get started. I don't have any comments, so look forward to your questions and hopefully a couple of questions from anybody listening to us. So
Sure,
let's
sure. So
let's move
there are
ahead.
quite a few people, including the person who called me up this morning asking about the show today. So, but we will, during the show, of course, have live questions, Rajan. So the
Sure.
format of the show is that I have some prepared questions for you, which are the easier ones. The tougher ones come from the audience usually, but that's the format. And we will, as we get towards the middle of the show, I will bring in those questions. So first up, which is I would say is a pretty obvious one straight away, is that why do we even need habits? Why can't we take the day as it comes and enjoy the uncertainty and have you know big fun in that process? Why do we actually need habits, if at all?
Mhm. All right. Um, there are two parts to the answer. One is the question that you asked: Why do we need habits? And second, like, should life be all habits? Should it, or should we have some space for spontaneity? I'll take that also along with this. Um, Anshuman, just imagine that you wake up in the morning, and you have everybody has some routine, right? The routine will vary, but we have a routine. You know, we freshen up, brush your teeth, take a shower, like have breakfast. Some people would love to go for a run. Some people will read. Some people will do nothing. Just but there'll be some routine. Now, just imagine a day where when you wake up, it's like you have never done anything before, and everything you have to think. Okay, should I brush my teeth now? Like, should I splash some water on my face? Like, should I have breakfast now? If you start thinking about every activity from ground up, and if you start renegotiating with yourself, okay, do I feel like having breakfast? Do I feel like taking a shower? Maybe yes, maybe no. A couple of things will happen. One is there are these activities which bring in value. Well, it's not dramatic. Like when you take a shower, it doesn't do anything major, but it is a very, very useful thing. But if you start negotiating with yourself, or if you have to think about everything every single day, two things will happen. One is you will waste a lot of time and energy on that, and second, some days you don't do it, which is not good for you. So so there are so these are the kind of things which, number one, add value. Number two, you have to do them regularly. And number three, some of them may not be as exciting, or they may not be as tempting as, let's say, having an ice cream. So your mind may sort of want to walk away from that sometimes, but we don't want to do that. So we need to take advantage of whatever is our neural wiring, such that those things which should happen, they happen without too much of negotiation and discussion. And essentially, that is what habits are. Now, our brain has evolved this whole thing. If you think about the evolution of human beings, evolution of, I would say, animals, and how did habits come about? The idea is exactly the same. You could you can take certain actions deliberately, but when our brain wants to be efficient. So when you want to be efficient, what you do is, when you see that there are certain things that you're doing again and again and again, like even in life, Anshuman, you must have noticed, like people talk about, let's say, oh, let's automate things. Let's write a script to do something which I'm doing again and again. Our brain is doing exactly that. It is automating using a script, and that script, that automated script, is nothing but a habit. So why do we need habits? We need habits so that we don't waste time, energy on doing things which are of value, but which we may or may not feel like doing all the time. The second part of which wasn't exactly an explicit question, but I still think it's interesting to take up, is
Sure,
uh,
sure.
spontaneity versus habit. And the way to think about that is, when we say have some habits or have routines, it is not that the whole life, morning to evening, everything has to be habit driven. No, that's not the idea. But the idea is that, yes, you have a lot of space for spontaneity. But if you can, number one, anchor the start of the day and the end of the day, if possible, like into these activities which are required regularly, which are meaningful, then it frees up, essentially, it frees up your mind and your mental energy to focus on what truly matters. So we have to have that balance. Life has to have spontaneity. It also needs to have routines. And I believe that this mix is the best way to live our life. And anything that you think is valuable and you require every day, try to put it on autopilot. Create that script. You wake up, and while you're awake, the script runs, so that you don't have to chase it. The script will take care of it. Now, it seems easy. Obviously, it's not. Human brain is not exactly like a Python program. So it needs some effort to get that script created, to strengthen the script, to make sure it doesn't change over time. So all that is there, but that's why it happens.
Fantastic answer, Rajan. Of course, I can relate to the first part clearly that, having for some years being a regular runner, and even though I'm on a little bit of a break, I still do the same routine. I get up at more or less at the same time. I still have the same thing. I can't do certain exercise because of a small injury, but I'm still, I feel restless if I'm not doing what I have been doing, right? So
Yeah.
that is the power of habits, that before you realize it actually changes you, and then you become a certainly different person. So thanks for that. Uh, Little glitch being reported. I can see some notes from two, three people, Deepak Verma and Sridhar, about the LinkedIn feed reloading. So my suggestion, friends, is that please reload the page, if or uh, check this same video on YouTube, on my channel Manage Better. So it's the same stream is there, or my Twitter channel. If your LinkedIn situation persists, many people are reporting that this is working fine for them. So maybe something at your end, and please don't waste time trying to fix it. You can jump off to onto YouTube or Twitter as well. So, but thank you very much for reporting it. Uh, back to the questions that we had, Rajan, for you. Habits is, of course, in the last few years, courtesy to individuals Charles Duhigg and James Clear, have become very popular in the reading community. So apart from doing this kind of shows and all, I'm quite an avid reader as well. And uh, in our community, James Clear's Atomic Habits is one of the, I would say, last 2 years, most popular books that many people would have read. They have certainly made it popular, right? So, but it started, of course, with Charles Duhigg. Any views on their works? How does it integrate with your thinking, your work? Because you are one of the people who is practicing all that, right? We haven't seen Charles and James's practice of what they are doing. We have only read their books, so we don't have any insight into how they implement it, but we have an insight into how you implement it and how you run Habit Strong and how you run cohorts, and including your lovely posts around, runs around the country as well. So we know that you are implementing it, and not only implementing for yourself but also helping others. But any linkage back to these two works, Charles Duhigg's and James Clear's works?
Yeah. So I have read both those books, and in fact, Duhigg's book, Power Habits, was actually the first book I read on habits, which was it was very inspiring. So it actually got me started on thinking about a lot of these problems. And his book is phenomenal. He talks a little bit. He's introducing the idea of habits and the habit loop. It is a little bit less of like how to go about it. I think that's the sort of gap, or that's the angle that James Clear brought, which is, if you want to implement this, this is sort of not exactly step by step process, but this is at least some kind of roadmap he gave. And I believe both those books, they are fantastic. To an extent, they also complement each other. Um, James Clear has a lot of small stories. Charles Duhigg gives some like interesting, very interesting case studies, some phenomenal examples from business world, and I would highly encourage everyone. I mean, if you feel like you need to read some books, I think both those books are quite phenomenal. And yes, I have read and have benefited a lot from both those books.
Actually, while you were talking, I did recall that in James Clear's Atomic Habit, he has credited a lot of his thinking to Charles Duhigg, and more or less, it is positioned like a sequel to
Hmm.
The Power of Habits. I mean, there can't be a sequel in that kind of a genre,
Right, right.
but he's kind of building upon
Yeah,
what Charles Duhigg did, and it is fascinating how a bestseller can then be improved upon in some ways and
yeah,
become even more bigger. So fair enough. Just checking with the people who were facing issues. So I have actually pasted the copy pasted the YouTube link in my on the LinkedIn feed. So in case you are still struggling, please check out the YouTube or Twitter links. Right. With that slight digression, I am back to the question. So while thinking about this topic and while kind of researching and looking at everything that I could ask you, one question kept popping up again and again as to why do we really struggle with habits? I mean, in the opening of the show also I said that bad habits seem to be easier to slide into. I mean, you start one drink, one smoke, and it very soon becomes you know daily and then multiple times a day. But the same does not happen to good habits. Right? Technically, one can argue that habits are all result of social influence, repetition, having a process. The same happens for good and bad habits. But the bad habits gets inculcated a lot more easier. And the same process, even though theoretically it is the same thing, the same influences which help us slide into a bad habit also help us rise into a good habit, but it doesn't work out that way. So any since you have helped a lot of people, I'm sure you would have seen more examples than yourself, right? We most of us, we have our own examples. So I,
absolutely.
or maybe close family, or two three friends, but you, because of habit strong and the work that you do with many people, would have seen more data points. And anything on this, why is it easier or to get slide into bad habits, but the same process does not apply to good habits?
Yeah. Um, all right. So there are, again, I'll try to peel it layer by layer. The first thing, Anshuman, is that it is not true per se. It's not true that we get attracted to bad habits and we move away from good. I'm guessing it's statistically mixed. But one thing which does happen is the habits that get formed really easily, we take them for granted, we don't talk about it. So as an example, let's say if we have the habit of every day morning we brush our teeth and take a shower and maybe have coffee or whatever, or have breakfast. Now, these are valuable things. Imagine if you did not take a shower or brush your teeth every day, that would be a problem. But in our mind, it's like, okay, that is a given. So we don't even think of that as a habit. Similarly, there'll be some other good habits as well, which we have built in. Like, so you reach office, you park your car properly, you follow certain routines in your life. We we take them take them as a given, so we might not realize that we do actually have good habits. So that's number one. Second thing is, if you think about why our brain has evolved this thing called habits, like I mentioned earlier, it's like brain's ability to run some automated scripts. In a given situation, the trigger comes and our brain just runs it. Now, the reason this was done, ultimately, all of evolution is designed for one thing. What is that? Survival. Survival, and survival, of course, involves reproduction. So, if something was harmful to us as a species, that particular trait would have been eliminated for the most part through evolution. So, in some sense, we should expect that habits should actually help us do things which help us survive better. But what has happened is our life has changed a lot in the last few thousand years. So our brain has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, but our life has evolved over a few thousand years, and in fact a lot over last 50 to 100 years. So our brain is still the brain of like minus 1 lakh years from now, but the situation has changed. So simple thing is, let's say people talk about like bad habits as in eating. So we eat a lot of junk food, fatty food, too much of snacking, etc. But when we were in the wild, there was no such thing as too much of snacking because there wasn't food. Like you had to forage for food and just barely survive. If you got if you got a sugary fruit, it would improve the odds of your survival dramatically because now you have like you're getting condensed energy reserves. But in the last, I would say, a couple of decades, the thing has flipped. Now, fatty food is like in abundance. Sugary food is like you go to supermarkets and the shell. I keep noticing this when I go to supermarkets, like 80% stuff, 80 to 90%, is rank unhealthy. Like sugary drinks and this packaged food and that packaged food. I'm not trying to run down or say I'm not absolutely not being judgmental here. But the fact is, like, if you start having those things in large quantities, they're going to be harmful. So the mind, our wiring in the brain has not changed, but the situation has changed, and therefore now this disconnect has come, and that disconnect is what makes us feel that we are attracted to bad habits. Now, the third layer I want to peel here is that the mechanics of habit formation. So why do we do certain things? So it's very simple. Our brain has whatever our brain found valuable, our brain has made it pleasurable. Let's think of it that way. So having sugar was very valuable, not now, like long back. So our brain made it pleasurable. So when it's pleasurable, we want to do it again. And now there's a small little bit of neuroscience, which because of James Clear's book, everybody sort of knows, which is that when we do something which gives us pleasure, or there's one more thing, or it gives us a sense of achievement. Either of them. There are in fact not one. There are two circuits in the brain which involve this release of this neurotransmitter called dopamine. So think of dopamine as the motivation chemical. If you have dopamine, you are motivated to do something. So when we have a sugary drink, dopamine is released. We feel good. Well, we feel more motivated. That's a more precise statement. So when we keep doing those things again and again, if there is a pleasure attached to it, it's not about good or bad. That's our judgment. Remove that judgment. Just look at from what is happening. Anything which gives us pleasure, that thing, it we are likely to do it again and again. And if we repeat it sufficient number of times, our brain starts noticing this pattern that, oh, you know what, this thing, whenever I'm in situation X, I take action Y, it feels great. Why should I have to think about it every day? Why don't just do it automatically? And then that script gets formed, as you repeated that script or that habit, sort of so habit groove, so to say, it starts getting deeper, and then over time it becomes a habit. So it's when we say bad habit, it is because it is only actions that give us pleasure. If good things give us pleasure, we will absolutely do those things. So like Anshuman, so you have talked about running. I'm sure in your early days it must have been hard, but it would have gotten to a point where you actually started enjoying it. Maybe
Absolutely.
not in the first half, but when you finish, it actually feels amazing. And there are people who are addicted to running, and in fact, it can go to a point where people run so much that it can even be harmful. So it is not the case that we only form bad habits. It is about the mechanics of habit formation, and this mechanic, since is driven by pleasure or achievement, it pleasure usually takes us in the direction of because of instant gratification, it takes us in the direction of things which are not necessarily very helpful.
So pretty much the word chemical locha is actually applicable. the, the summary of all this is that we have to understand how the mind works, and you very clearly brought out that while our life and things around us has changed dramatically in the last 200, 120, 25 years, but the body and the mind is probably from hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Absolutely.
And that's also, everybody now knows or should know that, how harmful sometimes extra insulin in the body can be, because
Oh
it
yeah.
immediately pushes any food that we eat into the
Yeah.
cells. And that was evolved because we didn't know when the next food was coming. So
Absolutely.
insulin is trying to hide everything in wherever it could, but now the hiding is being seen by everybody because it so, there is no hiding of
There's no
that.
hiding
So
anymore.
I have somebody. I will take a few comments from the audience, and these are some of my, very, I would say, fanatical audience. So I will bring Deepak Saluja. He's head of marketing at ICSC Direct and seems to know you. Has attended your boot camp and is saying thank you. And so thanks, Deepak.
Thank you.
This is the same Rajan, the same fantastic Rajan. So don't worry. Uh, Aniket Rai loves your posts, so please do more of that, or more regularly. I'm sure he's referring to LinkedIn posts, which I also refer quite often. So, and Aniket and I have discussed earlier that, and this is slightly on slight digression to habits, is that while chat gpt and other things are becoming a little bit more popular and they may take away the content that many people create, but the kind of content that you create is safe because that is coming directly from experience, which hopefully chat gpt and other things will take one more generation to evolve. So we are fine. Some more fans, and one of my friends as well who likes your work as well. So thank you very much. I'm looking for
Thank
a question that had come in, and or actually a suggestion. Aniket has suggested, and I'm presenting it on the screen so that everybody can also check these books. Aniket is quite a reader and also tries to help others to read better. And two books that he is suggesting is How We Change by Katie Millman and Good Habits, Bad Habits by Wendy Wood. So thanks, Aniket. I will take some questions. There are some questions, Rajan, but we will take them a little later into the show. And I will return to some of these questions that I had worked on. So, in your work with Habit Strong and how you created, and of course, I'm sure it has taken a while to stabilize. But what kind of habits do your clients want to develop? I mean, the obvious ones, because of my recent experience with running, is getting up early, going to the running club or whatever group we have formed. But that seems to. But what are the other typical habits that you see people coming to you for help on? And any success stories around that? Or you can obviously don't have to mention names, but any success stories that you can share so that it becomes a little bit real for the audience and they know that this is not a book. These things have happened.
Yeah. Um, a lot of us struggle with the usual problems of human existence, distractions, inability to focus, our mind going in all kinds of directions, the sense of inadequacy, uh, we feel lethargic. We have, all of us, we have goals. There are things that we want to achieve in life. We want our life to be in a certain way. And when we try to walk on that journey or try to walk on that road which will take us to our destination, a lot of things derail us, and it would be a combination of all of these things, and that is what we hear from a lot of our users, a lot of our customers. And what I do at Habit Strong, Anshuman, is we try to offer programs and products which I have personally found to be of immense value in my personal life, because at least then I have one data point that this thing is valuable and it really works. So we have programs right now around focus, around building a morning routine, which also has incorporates meditation, which is a great focus building tool also for stress and anxiety. In fact, right now we have launched one program, just about launched, on journaling, one program on stress and anxiety just getting done. It's like a very in-depth program, and then one coming on productivity and focus. So these are the areas that are of like most interest to me, and that is what I I feel like a lot of people struggle with. In terms of success stories, there have been obviously like more than 10,000, 20,000 people, so lots and lots of them. Many of them strike out like the stand out, and specifically like there's one person who like I said, I haven't taken his permissions, I wouldn't name him, but um, he's a long distance runner, and he's got a phenomenal story. Like he used to be very overweight, very unhealthy, massively, and then he has cut down and he's very fit. But so when he came to our program, that was like 2 years back, he just said, I'm very distracted. Like even when he runs, he would share his thing on Strava or whatever, and he said like these distractions are becoming a major problem. And he went through a bunch of programs, and then I think his COVID and all those things happened. So his company was struggling, and he was at a point where he wasn't sure like will I be able to keep this job. So one day he messaged saying, okay, should I quit this job? I said, no, don't quit. Like stay there, and let's build on it. Like let's start building focus. And then it was so dramatic. Like in 6 months, he went from going from point where he thought he should quit because it was not going to work out to a point where he became a top performer. Now he has joined another firm, one of the big consulting firms, um, and I think he's on the partner track there. And again, the credit goes to him, not to us. We obviously supported him, but it's him. And I can say all of it comes from just two things: focus and discipline. I know these are not very popular words. This is not something which seems exciting, but trust me, the it's a little bit of effort, a little bit of mindfulness, but the outcome that you can get in 6 to 12 months, it is actually quite staggering. And I've had like dozens of examples. I remember people who have multiple people who have said like, okay, I used to sleep at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. and now I'm waking up at 5 a.m. Again, it's not my recommendation that you should all wake up at 5 a.m. That's not the point. But the point is that people have made dramatic changes, and in some sense, Anshuman, I think life is very simple. The problem is that we think that there is something very convoluted, something very complex out there which will solve my problem. No, it is the simple things, but simple, but it's hard because not because it's complicated, hard because our mind, the same, going back to the original question, older question on bad habits, our mind wants to do stuff which is pleasurable. These simple things may not be super pleasurable, at least not in the moment. But if we are able to invest some time, if we're able to figure out how to go on that journey for a couple of months, we get to a point where, like Anshman, like in your running journey, this must have happened at some point where after the run is over, it feels just
Absolutely.
different. Yeah. And
I,
when you get started, your mind can recreate that feeling. You don't feel that right now, okay, the runner's high or the bliss or whatever, but you know it's coming and you actually want it. So what my message to everybody is, if you can find a way to get to that inflection point, your mind will want it. And being focused, it's hard, but it is immensely rewarding. Not just rewarding in terms of outcomes. It's such a pleasurable feeling to be calm, to be present, to be with one task, to not be super distracted. On the other hand, if you're distracted the whole day, I can nearly guarantee it feels very frustrating. It's not like, if I'm checking my Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, this, that, like the whole day, it's not like I feel like, oh, yay, I did that. No, I feel like, why am I doing it? That helplessness, that frustration, I cannot guarantee for everyone, but I'm sure most of us have it. So so try to overcome that. And I would say this is something that you should experience for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Take my word for it only for the duration, for long enough for you to try these things out. But if you do that, you will see the benefit. I have seen this in literally thousands of people, and many of them have gone ahead and built their health, built their career, felt much better, gotten over stress and anxiety, lots of stuff. And again, all credit to them. We are just helping them. We're not we are just showing a roadmap and supporting them, but it is they who have taken the action.
so I'm glad you said this, that and I'm still, my mind is still on that one sentence that you said. It is simple but not easy. So
Yeah.
it needs something to do, but the things to do are not that complex.
No.
It may not be easy. That's all. Right? So many of us, and I, in in the so I have changed quite a few things in my own career, and I'm 50 now. And about 10 years ago, I started making some smaller changes, including financial discipline and waking up and running and other things. And obviously, like you said, it's very difficult in the beginning, but once you start enjoying the process, the joy is in the process itself. The
Yeah.
You don't even have to end it, in the sense that the euphoria is not only at the end but in the process itself. Anybody who's run a marathon will know that those 4 5 hours, sometimes 6, whatever time you take, are one of the most memorable times. And one thing, Rajan, I can add here is that one small change that I made uh, during the running days, and I will soon be back, was when I started feeling that I was distracted and very anxious about my timing. And
Hmm.
after multiple races, I realized that the more I was trying, the lesser I was performing. And my mind throughout and this was on my half marathon days, my mind was always stuck at
Hmm.
you know where am I and what, and I'm doing those calculations and all that. And for one run I said, look, chuck it, I'm not taking my watch with me. So I left my watch home.
Right.
I don't want this watch. And that was my best timing. And
Hmm.
I was smiling. I was happy. At the end, I was extremely joyful. I was not aware of the timing, and I
Hmm.
was super happy. So this is also something that sometimes we are just too anxious about the
Hmm.
outcomes during the process, and
Right.
don't leave the outcome to the final stage, and
Right.
forget to enjoy the process. And this happens in every habit, not just running.
Absolutely.
Similar thing happens in every habit. So moving on, there are quite a few comments coming in, and couple of questions I have highlighted. So Mihir's question is about, and I'm putting on the screen so that all of us can read. My question is about, to get unstuck is from a routine or rut. That is no longer useful, and the person needs transformation or change from the old to new. The person knows this, is aware, but it is somehow unable to act upon. So obviously, he's coming from that some routine or habit which was useful earlier, but now we need to grow out of it or move on. What to do in those situations? So
Yeah. Mihir, thanks for the question. So let's broaden this question to how to break any habit that is not serving you or that is unhelpful, unhealthy, etc. Now, the starting point of any change is is that you have to want that change from inside yourself. Sometimes what happens is we want a change because people say this is good, that person says, this person gave me an advice, my mentor said something. Yeah, everybody says, and it's all useful. I mean, it's useful data point. But at the end of the day, the question is, how much do you want it? If you don't, if we don't have that inner, that if we don't want the outcome badly enough, it is like starting a car for a 200-kilometer drive, but there is only half a liter petrol in the car. After 5 or 10 kilometers, it'll be like, okay, I'm out of motivation. What do I do? In fact, this is the common theme. Like, okay, I'm out of motivation. My question is okay, the fuel tank is empty. You did not have enough fuel. When you are driven, and I have been through some phases of my life when there was certain goal, maybe it was a career, maybe getting into this college, whatever. The goal was so compelling in my mind. It was almost like a visual image. It may or may not be relevant to every scenario, but like when I wanted to get into a good college, specifically I wanted to get into an IIT. I had some image in my mind, like literally image, like a JPEG file, you can call it, right? So I had an image, and that image may be inaccurate. That doesn't matter, but I could visualize what it would be like to study engineering or to study some higher higher level maths or science or whatever in those environments. And when that image is compelling enough, it will pull you. So Meher, to you and to everybody, the first question, if you want to change, is ask yourself why change. In fact, flip it and ask yourself why not change. Challenge yourself to stay the same. And if you can convince yourself that okay, staying the same is not an option, if your mind says no, 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 I don't want to be the same, the change is some, I want that change, then there is a shot at that change happening. So that is starting point. Second thing is, From your question, Mir, it seemed like getting started also can be a problem. Now, there are different ways in which you can get started. That is why some people wait, like for not wait necessarily, but they make New Year's resolutions. They're looking for some special occasion. Now, here is what I would say: if some special occasion is there, it presents itself, take advantage of it. But every day can be special. So, second thing is you have to get started, and you need some mechanism. And when people talk about hacks, normally hacks don't work. I'm not very fond of them, but try whatever, anything which can help you get started. And as an example, let's say if somebody wants to build a running habit, maybe the hack might be just like, find two running buddies, or maybe one running buddy, and say, hey, let's show up tomorrow at 6:30 and we start this. So, starting again, I'm not going to get into all the details. If you have read those books, James Clear has talked about habit stacking. Link something that you want to do to something that you're doing already, and make it like one whole package. So when you do activity X, automatically your mind is reminded of Y. All those things will work. But if you don't have that burning desire for the change, nothing else will work. I'm sure about that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that starting point, and then once you decide you need it, fix a day, fix a time. Like today evening, 7 o'clock, whatever that activity starts. Then of course there are other tools and tricks of the trade. So use a habit tracker, have an accountability mechanism, try to understand what the habit is. So now I'm getting a little bit of habit science. What is the trigger for the habit that you're trying to break? What is when the trigger hits you? What are the trigger is like? How do you feel? Like what kind of intense craving do you have? How can you handle that? Can you substitute the action with something else? Or look at other mechanisms to make it difficult to take that action, make the new action more rewarding, at least up to a point where. So as an example, for running, if you if you join a running group, running is still hard, but the socializing that you get to do, that gives you pleasure. So it's like something bitter with something sweet together, it seems like sweet enough. And then once you've done that for 6 months, 12 months, then after that the activity itself intrinsically becomes valuable. So you have to it's not one simple thing. I think it's a combination of all of those things. But if you have this lined up, and it all starts with that burning desire to change, then you can make a change. Absolutely.
Absolutely stunning, Rajan. So, anybody who's stayed on till this particular point, where the last 3 minutes Rajan has explained how all this happens, really, this is what is the pinnacle of the show. This is the feeling I was getting when I would complete a half marathon and think, oh, this was worth it, right? So, all the weeks of chasing you, Rajan, was worth it in the last 2 3 minutes that I got from you. So, thank you once again.
No problem.
Um, and very rightly said, sometimes in running and all, and in any other thing, the habit to build is not to get up at 5 a.m. The habit is to sleep at 10 p.m. So the what is the trigger habit or that you are putting in? Can you put your running gear and shoes at the door and be ready for the morning? That is a trigger that you are creating for yourself. So many people do this, that I'm not going out for a run, I'm just putting on my shoes. Once the shoes are on, you will go out. So many of those things I was remembering, many of these examples, like when you were sharing your story. So thank you very much. There is one Rohi Shetty. Not too sure if it's Rohit Shetty or Rohi, but how do I avoid or minimize distractions, and how do I get rid of destructive habits? Very loaded question, Rajan, but any quick response?
Let's take the first one first. Minimizing distractions. I wish I could give like a full answer, but it's a long answer. It's a long process, in fact. Um, Rohit, whatever your name is, here is what I would suggest. Like any habit that you want to break or build, one framework to think about that is habit has a loop. Okay, and the loop is there's a trigger, and then you take an action, and there is a reward. And when it gets reinforced, when it's done multiple times, then you start having a craving. At that point, James Clear says trigger, craving, action, reward. It's the same thing, but he's talking once the habit is formed, now you have a craving for that. So if you want to break distractions, you have to break this habit loop. It's like a chain. You can break a chain at one point or multiple points. Now, why multiple points? Why not just one point? Because our brain is like it's not. It will sort of still find a way around it, right? But at least at one point you have to break. So you have to look at what your distractions are and what the triggers are. Typical triggers for distractions are boredom and anxiety. Like that's like 95% of the time. So while you cannot remove boredom or anxiety, then the next question is okay, then how do I handle those things? So when I feel bored, I'll give you just one or two tips quickly because there's a lot and it'll be hard to unpack it right away. When you get bored right now, Rohit, just think about what action do you take now. Maybe you just open your WhatsApp or Instagram. Let's do one thing. Let's find an alternative to that. Okay, so maybe carry a nice book or something. If book is not what excites you, find something else which you find interesting. Every time you're distracted, you want an escape. Change the escape route. So now go to this new thing: a book, a comic strip, MP3, or maybe a song on your mobile device or whatever it is. And then you'll find that okay, now instead of going A, you're going towards B, and that'll start breaking it down. One last thing I would say for everyone is whenever if you so whatever phone or device you use, if possible remove all notifications. In fact, whenever I buy a new phone, the first day I spend my first 1 or 2 hours just making sure I remove as many notifications as possible, except for what Android will natively like it, you cannot eliminate, those will stay. Every notification is out. Anything you can access via the browser on your laptop or desktop device, do not have an app. I write on LinkedIn regularly, I use it regularly. I do not have a LinkedIn app on my phone. I'm not saying you should remove. I'm not saying it's. I'm not criticizing it or judging it. All I'm saying is I want to make it harder for myself to go and check LinkedIn. I don't have NDTV, though I read NDTV news. I don't have CNN app because again, if I have an app, it becomes like slightly easier. I want to make it a little harder. So there are lots and lots of stuff, but I would say let's start with this. The second one, how to get rid of destructive habits. It's a very broad question. Just I will refer to the earlier answer I gave, which was around harmful habits. Same thing, habit loop. Figure out at which points can you break it, and after that, fix a date, fix a time, and just start working on it.
Fantastic. The news part reminded me that it's been almost 3 years that we at home have not switched on any TV news channel. So, and the world is doing quite okay. We are also fine. So that is a reminder that you actually don't need many of these things. And the notification thing is something that many people have started doing, including me. I, for some years, have removed most of these apps. I have no shopping app on my phone, no Facebook, nothing. LinkedIn is there because I update quite regularly, but I have notifications off, so it doesn't ding and ping through the day. Except WhatsApp, where I find very difficult to how to
Yeah.
manage the switching off the notification. I am driven to the extent that I may actually one day disable WhatsApp as well. But thanks, thanks Rohit. Good question, or Rohi. Uh, One interesting off the syllabus question has come in, Rajan. This wasn't the plan that we were, thinking of. Aniket wants to know. I want to learn about your writing process. So he did mention earlier about your writing on LinkedIn. Anytime soon that you are planning to launch a writing habit cohort on or at Habit Strong. So good praise. Thank you, Aniket. But only Rajan can answer this. So over to you.
Thank you, Aniket, for the question. My writing process is there will be two parts to it. One is obviously you need clarity. You need the idea, like what is the topic, what's the theme, or what's the point you want to make. And second is just going about writing it, which requires a bit of writing discipline, not a whole lot, a little bit, but also a lot about your own style, your own practice, proficiency with the mechanics of writing, grammar, composition, etc., etc. So in terms of capturing ideas, that's something that I'll be honest, like we all struggle. I certainly struggle with it, but the one way to handle it is you will get ideas at different points of time during the day, not when you're sitting down to write. I mean, then also you can rack your brains, but right now, let's say you and I are talking and something clicks. The thing that clicks in your head, very often in like 1 minute or even in 30 seconds it will be gone. It's like it's just a blip, it comes and it goes. So you have to capture that idea. Now you need a system to capture. Right now what I'm using is I use Evernote. You can do it on Notion, you can figure out any system. So just very quickly, my information cap or my thought capturing system is I have an Evernote app on the phone. I have an Evernote extension on my Chrome browser, Evernote Clipper they call it. And then so anything that comes up, I can just put it there. And then later on, you look at it and see, okay, does it make sense? Does it seem interesting? And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So that's one. Regarding the writing cohort, Aniket, I don't know if we will do a cohort, but I certainly want to do something on writing because I feel like we live in an age where our ability to express and articulate and influence and share ideas, I think, is very critical to both our success as well as to living a fulfilling life. So I may offer something as a program, writing cohort. I would have loved to, but right now it's there's just not enough time. So probably not, but I might have some program on that in future.
Thanks, Rajan. So Aniket, I hope you got what you wanted. Interesting comment from Gopi. Gopi is a senior professional at Wipro.
He's a friend
Uh,
of mine.
Friend of mine too, so we have a common friend. So we worked together at some point in Infosys.
Okay.
So uh, and Rohi has clarified that his name is indeed Rohi. So our apologies, combined apologies, Rohi. I I'm very careful with people's names. It's important to be addressed correctly.
Absolutely.
Uh, some more questions. Harshad, a regular on the show, of course, Evernote and Notion. Yes, Harshad, and that's what Rajan mentioned. Though I have, I know we all don't like hacks, but I have discovered recently,
Mhm.
Rajan, and that WhatsApp now has a message to self
Okay.
feature.
Okay. Mhm.
So earlier, what I had is that I had made a group and then exited everybody from that
Yeah.
group. Only I was in that group. So I used to put all my notes when I was walking or anywhere else into that. Now I message to myself.
Okay.
So there is always a stream of ideas, and I also write on LinkedIn quite regularly. So I pick up from there when I don't have anything to schedule for tomorrow or write today or something. I go back to that folder and I see, okay, these are the last 2 3 days. These are the interesting things that I've noticed, and I then pick something up from there and write. Of course, when you start writing, you still have to follow the process, which you explained beautifully. But that spark sometimes can come from some of these things, and that message to yourself feature, I'm loving it actually. It has
Mhm.
reduced my dependence on Notion a little bit because Notion is an Evernote still needs you to do 2 3 more
Yes.
clicks.
Yes.
This is one click and goes directly into your inbox. Of course, it doesn't allow you to categorize and do the other stuff that those apps
Mhm.
can do, but it gets you started. So moving on, hmm, Shabir has interesting one. People don't decide their future; they decide their habits, and their habits decide their future. Fantastic. They see the same for all, but fantastic. So it's not so much a question. Sorry, I mistook it as a question, but it's a commentary on what we have been sharing here. Thank you, Shabir. Thank you very much. So moving on to some of the questions that we had, and you did mention how you help people through Habit Strong. So and it is usually a cohort based workshop, but anything more on that? If somebody has to reach out to you post this session, or anybody who watches this session recording later on, how do we reach out to you, Rajan?
Yeah,
If
so we have an email called bootcamp at habitstrong.com, BOTCAMP, bootcamphabitstrong.com. So my team watches that email and uh, they are at it. I mean, if it's a personal email, I may or may not, I may forget, sometimes it gets overloaded, but that is the way to reach out. Um, yeah, and on our website also, if somebody submits any query, everything comes to so our team manages it quite closely. So we get all of those.
Sure. So I'm presenting the website name on the screen, so those who want to make a note can make a note. And like Rajan said, and we've discussed earlier that he's also quite active on LinkedIn. So if you do reach out, that's also an option. But of course, if you do need the services, then best to go to the website, because then the backup team can also help. Okay, pretty much towards the last question, and so two books we've discussed in this the early part of the show, and we will wait for your book, Rajan. But meanwhile, what are the books that you would recommend us or the audience to read? Of course, two we have discussed, so I will take that you recommend those two. But anything else?
So I go through these different phases when there's certain topic which is like super exciting for me. So recently I've been reading books on psychology. There's one book I'm reading. I'm very excited about. Is It's called Attention Span by Gloria Mark. It is around the it is around how the mechanics of focus and distraction, and it's almost like a research book. It's very deep, so I'm finding it interesting. So that is a book started. There's a book called Breath by Breath by Larry Rosenberg. I just went to the audiobook, and now I'm going through his second audiobook, again on similar topic. Larry Rosenberg is a meditation teacher based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Is a fantastic, phenomenal guy. Then his guru was a Buddhist monk. He has written a book, Mindfulness with Breathing. So that's my one of my next reading books. Um, I'm on running, Anshuman. I'm trying to now like be a little more deliberate about it. So there's something called Maffetone, the Maffetone method. It's the name of the book. So Phil Maffetone is a running coach. Is again a phenomenal guy. So he has something called um, low heart rate running. So that's a philosophy he has. And I just about got started with that. So next 6 to 12 months, I want to actually build my running habit using that methodology. So I want to read his the Maffetone method book. There's also an MAF method, like a shorter version. I have that book as well. There are a bunch of books around productivity, around so getting things done by this guy David Allen. That was very interesting. There are lots of other books which I've lined up, which are of general interest. Like I want to read. What was that book? There is Lifespan, David Sinclair, David Steven Pinker, Rationality. It's again in my sort of, it'll come down the line. Book called Exercise by Daniel Lieberman. So he is not very fond of this extreme exercise, so he's trying to put it in perspective. Again, I may or may not like borrow all those ideas, but oh, okay, I should mention. I sorry, forgot. There's a book called Anxiety, Joseph Ledoux. It's a sort of technical book, but it's phenomenal. Like I haven't finished it. I've gone through a couple of chapters. Couple of chapters I did on Audible. I want to read it again. If you want like low down on anxiety, like a real hardcore science-based one, that's a great. I mean, there are lots of other books out there, but I'll stop there.
Fantastic. Again, once again, the last 2 minutes were worth the last previous 40 odd minutes. Because I do read a bit, and I put together a habit in the last almost 1.5 years now, more than 14, 16 months, is to write a book review every Monday.
Okay.
And except 2 Mondays in the last 14 months, I've been able to stick to the habit. Now it's a joy and pleasure to look forward to, because I also know that it's a responsibility as well, that there are some people who are looking forward to that. So it is a little bit of a responsibility as well. So I always enjoy this kind of a conversation around a book, because, like you said, you may not always absorb everything from every book,
Hmm.
but that diversity is also important. And
Hmm.
there are sometimes when you want to read something that you don't naturally believe in.
Hmm.
Why read only what you believe and like? Read something that you may not believe and don't like, and you may discover
Absolutely.
something there. So thank you once again. We are almost up on time, Rajan. I have a few more questions from audience particularly, but we will have to give them a pass. Some are on LinkedIn. So since you are quite active on LinkedIn, whenever you have the time, and please have a look at the show page, and some questions, if you can answer, that would be awesome.
Sure.
So with that, I would like to thank you and the lovely audience. And I usually end all the shows with the announcement of some of my next shows. So very quickly, without taking much time. So tomorrow itself, I am speaking on Vimal Mani's mid-career blues show. Rajan, I do coach people in mid-career blues. People who are stuck in a little bit of a mid-career and trying to help where I can. So tomorrow, 11 a.m. on LinkedIn again. Next Sunday, Ravi Krishnamurthy, President and Head of Operations of SBI Life, again in the Quality Show at 11 a.m. 4th of March is Noshin Chen on public speaking.
Mhm.
You spoke about mindfulness, Rajan. 11th March, 6 p.m. is Pandit Dasa on mindfulness, quite popular on LinkedIn as well. So there is a series lined up, uh, and it's a fantastic start with this series starts with you a little bit. So thank you very much for your time. With that, I will let you go, and thank you very much to the audience, lovely audience, and till we meet next time. Once again, uh, thank you, and bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.